The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maple Street as Eleanor Reese strolled down the quiet suburban sidewalk, her pace steady but unhurried. The retired schoolteacher had walked this route for years, enjoying the crisp air and the calm that came with it. But today was different. As she approached the corner convenience store, her sharp eyes caught a commotion just outside. A young black teenager, Jalen Carter, maybe 17 or 18, stood against the brick wall, hands raised, palms out, his entire posture defensive. He wasn't moving, wasn't arguing, just standing there, looking terrified. Towering over him was Officer Logan Barrett, a broad-shouldered cop Eleanor had seen before. He always carried himself with a rigid authority, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp with suspicion. He was the kind of officer who made people nervous, even when they weren't doing anything wrong. And right now he had one hand on his holster. Eleanor's steps slowed, the tension in the air was suffocating. A few bystanders stood nearby, watching, whispering, but no one dared to intervene. Behind the glass door of the store, the owner peered out, his face tight with anxiety. She could hear Barrett's voice now, low, sharp, accusing. "I told you to move along, kid. You think standing here all day makes you untouchable." Jalen swallowed hard. "I was just waiting for my friend, sir. I wasn't doing anything." Barrett stepped closer. "Don't lie to me. You think I don't know your type." Eleanor's stomach twisted. She had spent her life teaching kids to stand up to bullies, and she knew one when she saw one. She gripped the straps of her tote bag and stepped forward. "Excuse me, officer." Barrett turned sharply, eyes narrowing at her interruption. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you." Eleanor didn't flinch. "I think it does. The boy isn't doing anything wrong." Barrett's eyes flickered with irritation. "He's loitering." Eleanor's gaze remained steady. "So waiting outside a store is a crime now?" The air thickened. The bystanders leaned in, sensing something about to break. Barrett's jaw clenched. "I suggest you walk away, ma'am." Eleanor squared her shoulders. "I suggest you take your hand off your holster." A ripple went through the crowd. Barrett's face darkened. For a moment, the street was silent. Just the sound of distant traffic and Eleanor's steady breath. Then, without warning, Barrett lashed out. The impact was brutal. His fist collided with Eleanor's cheek, the force knocking her off balance. She stumbled, her feet tangling beneath her, and then a sickening thud. Her head struck the pavement. Someone screamed. A phone camera flashed. Jalen dropped to his knees beside her. "Miss Reese, Miss Reese." Blood trickled from her temple. Her eyelids fluttered. Then, nothing. In the distance, sirens wailed. The sharp ring of Daniel Reese's phone cut through the quiet hum of his office. He had been buried in case files, meticulously building his corruption investigation against a network of officers accused of misconduct. He barely glanced at the screen before answering. "Reese." A woman's voice on the other end was steady but urgent. "Mr. Reese, this is Nurse Carter from St. Luke's Hospital. Your mother, Eleanor Reese, was brought in a little while ago. She's in critical condition." Everything else in the room ceased to exist. "What happened?" Daniel demanded, already reaching for his suit jacket. "She suffered a severe head injury. Paramedics found her unconscious after an assault. You should get here as soon as possible." Daniel's heart pounded. Assault? His mother? He grabbed his car keys and strode out of his office, ignoring the concerned glances from his colleagues. The 15-minute drive to St. Luke's felt like an eternity. As soon as he walked into the ER, a nurse directed him to the trauma unit. His breath caught at the sight of his mother lying motionless on the hospital bed, hooked up to machines, an oxygen mask over her face. Her silver hair, usually neatly styled, was matted with dried blood. A deep bruise darkened her cheekbone. His throat tightened. "Mr. Reese?" A doctor approached. "Your mother suffered blunt force trauma to the head. There's significant swelling, and we're monitoring for a brain bleed. She's stable for now, but the next 24 hours are critical." Daniel forced himself to stay composed. Who did this to her? The doctor hesitated. We don't have all the details, but from what we were told, it was a police officer. The words hit like a hammer. Daniel took a step back, inhaling sharply. A cop, a damn cop did this. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he barely registered it. When he finally pulled it out, he saw the caller ID. Lisa Monroe, his lead investigator. He answered, his voice cold. Tell me you have a name. Lisa didn't hesitate. Officer Logan Barrett. We pulled witness reports and cell phone footage. He attacked her after she intervened in an incident involving a black teenager. It's all over social media. Daniel clenched his jaw so tightly it ached. Barrett. The name wasn't new. He's had complaints before, Lisa continued. Excessive force, intimidation, but internal affairs always cleared him. Too many reports were lost, too many cases dismissed. Of course they were. Daniel turned to look at his mother again, his stomach twisting. She had always believed in standing up for what was right, and now she was lying in a hospital bed because of it. He exhaled slowly, the cold fury settling in his chest like a steel weight. This isn't just assault, he said, his voice low and firm. This is the case we've been waiting for. Lisa's voice was equally sharp. What's the plan? Daniel's gaze hardened. We go after him, and we don't stop there. Daniel Reese stood in his office, staring at the crime board in front of him. A tangled web of names, complaints, and incident reports covered the whiteboard, all leading to one name, Officer Logan Barrett. He turned as Lisa Monroe, his lead investigator, walked in, dropping a thick file onto his desk. You were right, she said grimly. Barrett's history is worse than we thought. Daniel picked up the file and flipped through it. Excessive force complaints, internal affairs investigations that mysteriously disappeared, and reports edited or buried before they ever reached prosecution. This guy should have been off the force years ago, Lisa muttered, crossing her arms. Daniel exhaled sharply. And yet, here we are. A knock on the door interrupted them. Captain Henry Tate, a high-ranking officer in the department, stepped in, his expression unreadable. Reese, Tate greeted stiffly. Can we talk? Lisa gave Daniel a questioning look, but he nodded. Give us a minute, he said. As she left, Tate stepped forward, closing the door behind him. I heard you're going after Barrett. His tone was neutral, but there was an edge to it. Daniel didn't play games. I am. Tate sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, I get it. What happened to your mother was unacceptable, but you need to think about the bigger picture. Daniel's jaw clenched. The bigger picture? A cop put an innocent woman in the hospital and you want me to let it slide? I'm saying there are ways to handle this without making it a spectacle, Tate countered. Barrett's got people backing him. The union, the department, hell, some of the higher-ups. If you push too hard, this could blow up in ways you don't want. Daniel studied him. So, you're here to tell me to back off? Tate hesitated. I'm here to tell you to be smart. Daniel took a slow step forward, his voice lowering. You think I don't know how this system works? I've spent years watching officers like Barrett get away with this. How many complaints got buried under your watch, Captain? Tate's face hardened. Careful, Reese. No, you be careful. Daniel's voice was razor-sharp. Because I'm not just going after Barrett. I'm going after everyone who let him operate unchecked. If you're in my way, you're part of the problem. A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Tate exhaled and nodded. You've made up your mind. I have. Tate studied him for a long moment, then turned for the door. Before leaving, he glanced back. Watch your back, Reese. You're making powerful enemies. Daniel didn't flinch. He already knew. As the door closed behind Tate, Lisa stepped back in. That sounded intense. Daniel clenched his fists. Get me everything on Barrett. If we're doing this, we're burning it all down. The moment Daniel Reese filed formal charges against Officer Logan Barrett, The battle lines were drawn. Within hours, the police union launched a full-scale defense, painting Barrett as a dedicated officer unfairly targeted in a politically motivated attack. On local news, union spokesman Frank Delaney stood in front of a sea of uniformed officers, declaring, "Officer Barrett has spent years protecting this city. Now, because of one incident taken out of context, they want to ruin his career." Daniel watched the broadcast from his office, his jaw tight. "They're already spinning the narrative," Lisa Monroe muttered beside him. "They can try," Daniel said, voice cold, "but we have the truth. The department wasn't just protecting Barrett, they were circling the wagons." That same day, Chief Robert Calloway requested a meeting. Daniel expected a professional discussion. What he got instead was a veiled threat. Sitting across from Calloway in a dimly lit conference room, Daniel didn't miss the way the chief's fingers drummed against the table, measured and deliberate. "Reese, you're making this bigger than it needs to be," Calloway said. Daniel leaned forward. "A cop put an elderly woman in the hospital. How much bigger do you think it needs to be?" Calloway's expression hardened. "We both know this isn't just about Barrett. You've been looking into the department for months. You push too hard, and you won't just have the union on your back. You'll have the entire force against you." There it was, the unspoken warning. Daniel held his gaze. "Good. Then I'll know exactly who my enemies are." The meeting ended with no handshake, no pleasantries, just a silent understanding that war had been declared. That night, Daniel's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. A distorted voice spoke. "You think you're untouchable, Reese. Drop the case before someone gets hurt." Daniel didn't flinch. He let the silence stretch before responding, his voice razor-sharp. "Come at me yourself next time." Then he hung up. The next morning, Detective Kevin Rhodes, a clean cop stuck in a dirty system, approached Daniel in the courthouse parking lot. His eyes flicked nervously over his shoulder before he spoke. "I don't have much time, but you need to know, they're digging up dirt on you, anything they can use to discredit you." Daniel exhaled. "Let them dig. There's nothing to find." Rhodes hesitated. "That's not all. Barrett's lawyer is meeting with the DA's office to negotiate a deal. They want this buried." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Over my dead body." Rhodes nodded. "That's what I was afraid of." As he walked away, Daniel clenched his fists. They wanted him to fold. But if they thought he'd back down, they didn't know him at all. The air in Daniel Reese's office was thick with tension. The walls seemed to close in as he stared at the file in front of him. The case against Officer Logan Barrett was solid, too solid, and that made Daniel uneasy. "Something's off," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Lisa Monroe sat across from him, her expression mirroring his concern. "You think they're setting you up?" Daniel nodded. "Rhodes warned me they were digging for dirt, but I haven't done anything that could be used against me. That means they're manufacturing something." Before Lisa could respond, Daniel's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A familiar voice, low and laced with amusement, filled the line. Captain Henry Tate. "You're making a lot of noise, Reese. Thought you'd like a heads up." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "A heads up about what?" Tate chuckled. "Tomorrow morning there's going to be an anonymous complaint filed against you. Financial misconduct. Mishandling evidence, real nasty stuff." Lisa's eyes widened as she heard the conversation. Daniel exhaled slowly. "And I suppose this complaint just happens to surface right as I'm about to take Barrett to trial." "Funny how that works," Tate said casually. "You've got enemies, Reese, powerful ones. They're not going to let you burn their house down without a fight." Daniel's mind raced. If they were going this far, it meant they were desperate. And desperation led to mistakes. "Tate," he said, voice calm but deadly serious, "tell your people that if they come for me, they'd better not miss." Silence. Then Tate sighed. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But don't say I didn't warn you." The line went dead. Lisa leaned forward. "This is bad." Daniel shook his head. "No, this is an opportunity." Lisa frowned. "How is getting framed an opportunity?" Daniel smirked. "Because now we know they're scared, and scared people make mistakes." He grabbed his coat. "Get Rhodes on the phone. Tell him to dig. If they're planting evidence against me, I want proof, before they even make their move." Lisa hesitated. "And if we can't find it in time?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure this blows up in their faces." The morning headlines were exactly what Daniel Reese expected. District Attorney under investigation for misconduct. Corruption allegations surface against prosecutor targeting police. Daniel tossed the newspaper onto his desk, unfazed. It was a predictable move. Smear him, discredit his case, make the public question his integrity. But they underestimated him. Lisa Monroe stormed into his office, slamming a folder down. "They've fabricated bank statements, Daniel. Fake accounts, forged wire transfers. It's sloppy, but it'll be enough to make people doubt you." Daniel leaned back, tapping his fingers against his desk. "And the source?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Anonymous tip, but I traced it back. It leads to a shell company, one tied directly to Captain Henry Tate." Daniel's smirk was cold. "So, Tate isn't just covering for Barrett. He's part of the rot." Lisa nodded. "And that's not all. Rhodes got something on Barrett. Internal emails. Turns out Barrett wasn't acting alone. He's been a tool for higher-ups, enforcing their dirty work. And guess whose name shows up?" Daniel's eyes darkened. Calloway. Chief Robert Calloway, the head of the entire police department, had been protecting Barrett for years. And now, Daniel had proof. Lisa exhaled. "We have enough to blow this open, but if we go public, they'll come after you harder." Daniel stood, straightening his tie. "Then we don't go public." Lisa frowned. "What?" He grabbed his coat. "We take this straight to the Attorney General. No leaks, no media circus. We don't give them time to spin this." Lisa hesitated. "And if the Attorney General refuses to act?" Daniel's voice was firm. "Then we burn them ourselves." That afternoon, Daniel met with Attorney General Linda Warren behind closed doors. He laid out everything: the fabricated charges against him, the real corruption within the department, the names, the documents, the proof. Warren scanned the files, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, it was with measured certainty. "I will handle this personally." "But Reese, be careful. You just declared war." Daniel smirked. "They fired the first shot." That night, a black SUV idled outside his apartment. Daniel watched from his window, his instincts screaming that this wasn't over. And he was right. Daniel Reese barely slept. The black SUV outside his apartment was gone by morning, but he knew it was just the beginning. They wanted him rattled, paranoid. It wouldn't work. By noon, Attorney General Linda Warren made her move. She ordered an internal review into Chief Robert Calloway and Captain Henry Tate, issuing subpoenas for financial records, internal emails, and complaint files. The pressure was mounting. Lisa Monroe stormed into his office, phone in hand. "They're cracking!" She tossed her phone onto his desk, the screen playing a live news broadcast. Speaking news, leaked emails tie high-ranking police officials to cover up. Daniel smirked. "That was fast." Lisa exhaled. "Not fast enough. Barrett's missing." His smirk faded. "What?" Lisa nodded. "They pulled him. No one's seen him since last night. Calloway knows if Barrett talks, everything unravels." Daniel's mind raced. If Barrett was gone, it meant Calloway was playing his last card. He grabbed his coat. "We need to force their hand." That evening, Daniel held a press conference. He laid out the facts. How Barrett wasn't just a rogue cop, but part of a network of corruption. How Calloway and Tate covered for him. and how the entire department had enabled their abuse. As the cameras rolled, his phone buzzed. Detective Kevin Rhodes. "We found Barrett," Rhodes whispered. "Safe house outside the city. Looks like they were planning to move him." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Send the location." 2 hours later, he and a team of federal agents raided the safe house. Barrett was inside, looking like a trapped animal. "You don't understand," Barrett stammered. "They were going to kill me." Daniel stared him down. "Then talk." By sunrise, Logan Barrett had turned. He gave up Calloway, Tate, and half a dozen other officers, providing evidence of an organized web of corruption that stretched far beyond just one department. Later that day, Chief Calloway was arrested. Tate followed soon after. The headlines were brutal. "Top cops arrested in corruption scandal. Daniel Reese exposes widespread police misconduct." As Daniel walked into his office, Lisa grinned. "You did it." He shook his head. "We did it, but this isn't the end." She nodded. "No, but it's a damn good start." That night, Daniel stood outside his mother's hospital room. Margaret Reese was awake, her eyes tired but sharp. "You didn't stop," she said softly. He took her hand. "I couldn't." She smiled weakly. "That's my son." As he sat beside her, the weight of everything settled. He had won this battle, but the war wasn't over. And Daniel Reese wasn't done fighting. The story of Daniel Reese is more than just a legal battle. It's a fight for truth, justice, and accountability. He wasn't just defending his mother, he was exposing a corrupt system that had gone unchecked for too long. His courage is a testament to the fact that one person can make a difference when they stand up against injustice. This fight teaches us a crucial lesson. Justice doesn't happen on its own. It must be fought for. Those in power will always try to cover their tracks, but the truth has a way of coming to light. When revealed at the right time, it can bring down even the most powerful forces. Most importantly, this story reminds us that systems only change when people are brave enough to challenge them. Daniel didn't do it alone. He had Lisa, Rhodes, Warren, and the people who dared to speak up. When a community stands together, the truth cannot be silenced. What do you think about Daniel Reese's decision? Did he handle the fight against corruption the right way? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe that justice must always be protected, hit the like button to spread this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss upcoming stories about justice, power, and the fight against corruption. Share this video if you want this story to inspire more people. Let us know in the comments, have you ever witnessed or experienced injustice? What would you do if you were in Daniel's position? Let's discuss. Justice only has power when we speak up.